Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about fame, wealth, prestige, and all of the other things that naturally come from being an artist. And I'm going to be drawing this. Oh, actually no, I'm not drawing this today. This is actually, this is the cover art for the Green Monk trade paperback that's coming out from Image this fall. So it actually collects all of the work from the Green Monk webcomic, fully colored, plus some extras. So I'm very, very excited about this. Super stoked to be having this title picked up from Image. And I'm going to be telling you a lot more about this in the coming months. In the meantime, I'm actually going to talk about wealth and fame and why all that stuff is bullshit. And I'm going to draw this. Over the last year and a half of making YouTube videos and the last 2.5 years of working as an independent artist, I've thought a lot about what it means to be an artist, what the place of an artist is in our contemporary society, and what the roadblocks are keeping us from having a stronger, healthier, wiser artistic culture. What can we do globally, what can we do locally, and what can we do in our personal lives to create an ecosystem where beautiful work is created that makes humanity better, that liberates us where we're in bondage and unites us where we're alienated. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably caught bits and pieces as I've been working things out in my own head. And today I want to try and pull some of these ideas together. So my apologies to those of you that have been with me for a while or taken the time to raid the archive. Some of this, maybe a lot of this is going to be redundant, but hopefully I can put it together in a way that's more coherent and at the very least all in one place. Mostly today I want to talk about the personal choices we make as artists. I want to talk about the lifestyle, what the lifestyle requires, what your expectations should be, and all the pitfalls that can stand in the way of you being an artist. The first thing you should recognize is that being an artist requires that you are in tension with your community. That's what it means to make art. If you want to know what I mean, you can go back and watch my video on why we need art. The basic idea is that your job, in the most general sense, is to push for change, to find new ways to do or to see things. Your job is to upset the status quo and to stir up trouble. The second thing to understand is that you are one part of a larger system. Your job may be to push for change, but the job of many others is to preserve tradition, and society is healthier that way. We don't want everyone to be artists. We need new ideas, but we constantly have to be careful about destroying things that work in the name of progress. So society needs that balance. But even as an individual artist, you need to find that same balance. To find the balance between imagination and reality, freedom and responsibility, and individual and community. Yes, you need to push for change, but you also need something to keep you tethered to the ground. Really to keep you sane and to remind you that your art has a wider purpose than your own personal indulgence. With this in mind, we should have a fairly clear expectation of what it means to be an artist. We're creating things whose value is not yet obvious to society at large. And therefore, we shouldn't really expect to be compensated for creating those things. As a matter of fact, we are part of a massive evolutionary system of many innovators and artists, creating novel things and testing them to see if they will be of value to society. And like in all evolutionary systems, this means that some of these ideas will work, but that most won't. And that even of those that do work, some will kind of work, and some will be insanely successful. Very, very few will be insanely successful. How hard you work, how inventive you are, and what resources you have will affect your chances for success, but there will always be an element of chance, and the high chance that you will not succeed. This means that as an artist, you need to live your life in such a way that you're prepared for whatever happens. This means living a life of poverty and integrity. And I don't want to romanticize this too much. I'm sure when people hear poverty, they think you have to become a bum. This doesn't mean becoming a starving artist. It means living as simply as possible and being prepared to find satisfaction in the integrity of your work, not necessarily in its success. Because guess what? Chances are your art will not make you famous or rich, and preparing for that is the wisest thing you can do as an artist. If you accept artistic poverty and embrace your integrity, you can be Llewyn Davis. If you haven't watched it, Inside Llewyn Davis, it's necessary viewing for any artist. You can experience the chaos of life and still have the self-respect of not compromising yourself or your artistic vision. You can find satisfaction and peace in leaving a legacy you can be proud of. You can find meaning in the suffering and meaning in the struggle. That is, of course, if you actually do create work that you can be proud of. And in the rare case that you do find success, your emphasis on integrity will protect your art from being compromised, and your acceptance of poverty will keep you from destroying your life with the excesses of wealth. On the flip side, if you choose not to have integrity or pin your hopes on fame and success, then you'll most likely live a life of disappointing compromises. And in the rare event that you do make it big, your art is going to mean nothing. You'll sell out the first chance that you get. So choose poverty and integrity. That's probably the most important thing I can say here. Choose poverty and integrity even when and especially when you don't have to. Maybe read the Millionaire Next Door or, the Mr. Money Mustache blog. This brings me to lifestyle. It's a life of renunciation. You don't have to take this too far. You don't need to become celibate or wear a potato sack around, but you're probably going to want to give up some distractions that you really like. It probably means watching less TV, playing fewer video games, and maybe cutting back on the partying. Most of all, it means that you give up the temptation of living a life of consumerism, of being seduced by the illusion of wealth. This is such a hard tide to swim against. It would be great if we lived in a world where people didn't rank each other by the size of their house or the car they drive, but they do. And getting sucked in by the allure of things will suffocate your ability to create art. It'll take away your financial freedom, it'll clutter your life, and it'll cloud your priorities. I haven't always been the best example of this, but honestly, I haven't been the worst either. I've never had debt that was more than a couple $1,000s, besides, of course, house and car debt, which shouldn't be okay, but I guess everyone pretends like it is. One little thing my wife and I have been doing lately that seems to work really well is we've kind of set this rule where we can't buy anything that isn't a necessity, that's not a necessity, unless we sell something else to pay for it. Which, it's a great motivation to get rid of stuff, but it just kind of slows down unnecessary purchases and just kind of keeps us from being kind of mindlessly consumeristic. But finding the courage to resist consumerism is tough, but those that do it will have incredible freedom. It also means, maybe renouncing other things that will distract you from making art. Sometimes that means renouncing good paying jobs. Sometimes that means renouncing paid work entirely. Sometimes that means putting off art while you work a good paying job until you can basically, retire. I don't know. Maybe not a lot of people are going to be able to do that, but that's an option definitely a lot of people should consider. But this is also one of the reasons that I advocate for artists to live closer to the city, or at least to find a place to live that's walkable and bikeable. If you can live a life without a car and find most of your enjoyment in a rich public realm, you'll have a type of wealth that isn't obvious, but's real and powerful. This is a concept that we really need a better understanding of. I wish I could just do a whole video explaining the idea of a public realm. Especially in the States, we just have this really impoverished public realm and we don't understand how much better it could be. And it's important to this discussion, and I don't want to really go on this huge diversion to try to describe it. But if the idea is unfamiliar to you, I recommend you read Suburban Nation. It's a great description of kind of how we've gone wrong, particularly in the States. And I'll leave some info in the description. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. This is also why I advocate for artists to check their pride and rely on family to support them. I could have done this, and I wish I would have. I hope my kids feel comfortable with staying in our home as adults. I would much rather have them stay in our home rent-free and build some wealth than move into a stucco mini mansion that looks wealthy but is actually a giant millstone of debt around their necks. Housing nowadays is getting absurdly expensive, so however you can minimize or totally avoid that, the better off you will be. Honestly, there's lots of artists that got their start this way, so there's no shame in starting out that way. And the funny thing is that when you live your life as if you are poor, you start to build real wealth. It can be the money in the bank type of wealth that you get from saving. It can be the wealth that comes from having the freedom to live your life how you want. It could be the wealth of living in a place where there are interesting things going on outside your front door. Or it could be this type of wealth where you just live within a community of rich connections. And this is where another challenge of being an artist comes in. Sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference between an artist and a freeloader. And oftentimes that thought will weigh very heavy on your head, and you will want to do everything you can to prove that you're a contributing member of society. And you might give up your art or compromise your art to do that. At this point, I feel like I'm a bit torn. Like, what is the ideal situation? Do we want a society where we can subsidize artists more fully? Where there are more grants and fellowships and programs to allow artists to focus on art without having to pay the bills? Or is there something healthy that comes from having those responsibilities? I'm not totally sure of the specifics, but I do think that while an artist can renounce many things, they can't renounce their responsibility and loyalty to their community and the world at large. There are times and places where an artist needs to put their tools away and join others as equals. Maybe that means being a parent, maybe that means serving as a soldier or a volunteer or in a service capacity. Maybe it just means being a good citizen and voting or showing up to your city council meetings and fighting for issues that you care about. At the very least, it should mean thinking about your art as a means of making your world better, not just a ticket to stardom. And maybe we just need a broader cultural change too. Maybe we need to find a way to make the creation of art sacred, to make it possible for all these other important people in our society who are out there working paying jobs and preserving tradition to be able to look with awe and respect at those that choose to dedicate their lives to art. Back in the day, if someone decided like they literally wanted to be a monk and join a monastery, I think you would get a certain amount of respect and admiration from your community. But that happened because those people were willing to sacrifice something to take that path. Artists are not going to earn that respect without doing something to earn that awe and respect. And that probably is going to mean that artists need to be willing to sacrifice something and to risk something. I think this can only happen once we have an art culture that's sincerely dedicated to its art and that is willing to live a life of poverty and integrity. Only then will we really have the chance of inspiring a cultural support necessary to build a sacred space for art. But, even if that doesn't happen, even if we don't have a culture that rallies around artists, at least we'll have the integrity and the satisfaction of knowing that we created art in the right way and lived our lives in the right way. That's my hope anyway. So what are your expectations for success as an artist, and how do you live your life to try and prepare for that? Let me know in the comments. Please like this video, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.